The physical part of you is merely a flesh suit you wear. The body contains a brain or an interface tool that allows the observer to see into the physical universe. It is a viewing window, nothing more. The brain creates electrical symbols that the observer can interpret. The reverse is not important, as the construct we see is produced independently. We appear to see signals from the brain to the body, but we have no real objective way to prove what we experience is actually there. Said another way, just because we all experience a universe does not prove objectively that the universe actually exists. All we can prove objectively is that we all experience a universe. Ask Mr. Anderson, and he would say yes. Ask Neo, and he would say no. The brain does not create the mind. There is only one observer and many individuated singularities. Think of it like a multifaceted crystal sphere where each facet reflects and refracts a slightly different view. Each facet is prohibited from viewing exactly what another facet views or experiencing exactly what another facet experiences. These multiple facets are lives, and each life/singularity enjoys privacy from the others and thinks it is alone in its experience. That which looks out of my eyes, that I call me, is the same thing that looks out of your eyes that you call me. For it to be another way would ruin the experience. Think about how one being that lives in eternity could experience another being and know what it's like to feel mortal. It's a great thing to experience. How would a being go about experiencing that? Look around you. That is how it's done. The mind is universal, and our brains provide the conscious observer limited access to this vast mainframe of universal knowledge. Whether real or virtual, our senses produce feedback converted to holographic electrical symbols, imagery, and concepts to the conscious observer through the viewing tool, the brain. The physical exists only as interpreted information and does not exist as a true concrete form. We merely are convinced it is real, and our senses reinforce this illusion. One thing that can be said about our senses is that they are usually consistent from one singularity to another, given that no two singularities can see identically the same view, and provided they are paying attention properly. Our components. The observer sits at the center of experience. It is the entity playing the game and learning what it is required to learn. It is aware and conscious. The current model shows how the typical man or woman exists in the universe. The universe is perceived as outside of us. The body appears as a physical form in the universe. For most of us, what people see and know of our external character is an ego-driven persona that is largely hypnotized by what it sees in the universe. Typically, sensory input reaches the observer through the ego filter/interpreter, and we get a distorted view. We call concepts perceived this way as fact. Facts are truth filtered through our perception. If we have allowed our perception to become distorted, then we individually argue our facts with another man's facts. If the perceptions are clear, then we will perceive the same information identically, and there will be no disagreement. When pure logic is applied, both men will come to the same conclusion. This is known as being of one mind. I will give you tools to help you reach this stage of clarity. The ego is a defense mechanism used to protect the observer, but in the typical man, it has taken over the life experience. This is not a constructive way to exist. The ego is on autopilot in the typical man or woman, and is editing the experience to protect the observer from external and self-inflicted emotional and physical trauma. It does this by repressing the bad experience and storing it in a place out of the way so the observer seldom perceives it. This ego clutter builds up, creating a barrier between the observer, the self, and the universal mind. The self is tasked with assisting the observer through the course of the game. The self contains a working manual used in the game. The self has access to all parts of the universal mind. We all share access to the universal mind and the universal self. In the Bible, the self is referred to as the Holy Spirit. Its function is to assist the observer by manifesting experience for the benefit of the observer and all those around him or her as stuff. It operates strictly in accordance with divine law. The self is your best friend and will not truly harm the observer. But remember, the body is not the observer. Pain and suffering, as well as happiness and joy, are used by the self to help guide the observer through the game. If the observer becomes so confused that there's little chance of escape during this iteration or lifetime, then they will be removed from the simulation to try again. If the self determines that the observer is not paying attention, then negative reinforcement is applied until it gains the attention of the observer. This includes, in no particular order, stress, suffering, pain, agony, disease, and finally, death. This is why we are more likely to seek relief through spirituality after a period of stress. This is where real growth can take place. It is in these rare occasions where the self will break through the ego clutter and communicate with the observer directly. But it does not last long, and we seldom clear away the debris. We usually then go on, piling up more garbage, and doing it all over again. Eliminating the ego clutter. Ego clutter is unprocessed, uncomfortable life experiences that the observer is not able to deal with because the ego, through protecting the observer, conceals accurately this experience from the observer. When the observer does not process these lessons, they build up, creating a barrier between the observer and the self. The elements of ego clutter usually consist of painful experiences, shameful, regretful, or experiences that often cast the man or woman in a bad light. The ego tends to shift responsibility away from the observer or edits the facts relating to the incident to protect the observer. Religion uses a Satan figure in an unhealthy way to transfer blame and responsibility away from the man or woman who is actually responsible. It is not healthy to carry around unprocessed experience, as the observer will find that their growth is impeded. If the observer refuses to process this ego clutter, the self will begin replaying the same experience in its life over and over until the observer learns. Each time we get the same lesson again, the ego edits and throws the experience in the memory hole. Then we are locked into living out the same lesson repeatedly and not remembering why. This clutter builds up. It gets harder and harder to process new experience, and most importantly, it disconnects us from the universal self, and we have far less access to the universal mind. In essence, most of us suffer from a feedback cycle that dramatically reduces our chance of success. I love this game. I really love this game. Roage.